Hi everyone, welcome to this channel. This is Nat Chepan. Today I am going to discuss about electricity supply chain. What are all the various organizations involved in supplying the electricity power from the generation to the consumption? So without further ado, let's start the video. Here you can see a simple flowchart of electricity supply chain, which consists of power generation, step-up transformer, power transmission, step-down transformer, and then distribution transformer, and then industrial utilization and domestic utilization. I would like to explain this force chart with UK as an example. So if you take power generation, so power generation, it can be either renewable generation or non-renewable generation. So if you take renewable generation, it can be either wind or solar, and if you take non-renewable generation, it can be either nuclear or natural gas or coal, right? Yeah, obviously there are more other forms of generation, so I'm just taking the major forms, right? And so obviously if you take UK, so the transmission voltage level is like 275 kV and 400 kV. Obviously whatever power you generate, you can't directly connect the generated power to the transmission, right? So you have to step up using the step up substation and step up transformer. uh, so for example, if you take renewable generation, so the majority of the wind right now is generating around like 6.6 kV. The wind turbine is rated like 6.6 kV, and solar panels are rated below than 1 kV, right? So once you have generated the power, you have to step up the power. And with the natural gas and the coal generation, obviously the generators are rated around like 15 kV level, and you have to step up the voltage level of the generated power, right? And then it has to be transmitted to the transmission lines. So, and if you take power transmission, so power transmission is throughout the country. It consists of transmission towers, transmission lines, and underground cables. And then, wherever required, it has to be stepped down to particular voltage level, distribution voltage level, and then again it's stepped down using the distribution transformer, and then it has been utilized for domestic and commercial utilization, right? So what is the voltage level of medium voltage distribution here in UK? So so there are three voltage levels in distribution. So one is 132 kV, which is high voltage distribution, and 33 kV and 11 kV, which is medium voltage distribution. So the industrial customers can utilize the power at the 33 kV level and 11 kV level, that is based upon their demand, maximum demand. And obviously like the distribution transformer, again it will step down the voltage from 33 kV or 11 kV to 400 volt, which is further utilized by the domestic and commercial utilization. So here you can ask me the question, hey Nachepan, so you have explained about three processes in the supply chain. One is power generation, power transmission, and power distribution. So obviously these are the processes involved in the electric supply chain. Well, so these are the main process involved in this supply chain. But in addition to this, there are other processes too. I would like to explain further the process in this video, right? Well, here I would like to do the comparative analysis between two countries. One is the UK, another one is India, right? Since I have worked in both these countries, so I am taking the two countries as an example. So the UK's energy sector is almost privatized, and on the other hand, India still have some government-owned companies, right? So let's start with generation companies. So what are all the generation companies in UK? Yeah, obviously there are many generation companies. I can't list all of them. So I'm just listing two company here. One is EDF Energy and another one is SSE PLC. So EDF Energy is generating nuclear power, thermal power, and renewables also. SSE PLC is doing thermal energy and renewables. On the other hand, India have some government-owned companies, as I explained earlier. One is NTPC Limited and NHPC Limited in this sector. So NTPC is National Thermal Power Corporation and NHPC is National Hydropower Corporation. So they own many different hydro and thermal power stations in India. Uh, and in addition to this, India does have the Tata Power and Adani Power and many other non-renewable privatized owners also. Let's move to the, so what the generation companies do. Obviously, they generate the power. They own the infrastructure, generation infrastructure, and then once the power is generated, they step up the power and then they transmit the power to the transmission, right? Okay, so now we are going to see about renewable energy developers. So obviously, like there are many private players in both the countries in this space, renewable energy development. So if you take UK, there are companies called like RW Renewables, Vattenfall UK. Both have considerable share in solar and wind generation. And in India, you have Adani Green Energy, which is predominantly involved in the solar and wind generation, renewable generation, and Renew Power is also there. It's a big company also, right? And they do have the solar and wind power generation also. Okay, now the power is generated, and the generated power is pumped into the transmission system, and we have various transmission companies both in India and the UK. Now let's see what are the companies there. So in UK, there are three major companies. One is National Grid, another one is Scottish Power Transmission, and another one is SSEN Transmission. Right. On the other hand, so these are all companies is privatized now, and on the other hand, India do have the uh, uh, government-owned companies, like for example, Power Grid Corporation of India, and which is central government-owned public sector company, and there are some regionally owned companies also, like state-owned companies also. For example, if you take Tamil Nadu Transmission Corporation Limited is there, GetCo is there, and for each state, these kind of companies are there. So what they actually do, so they completely own the transmission infrastructure, and they transmit the power, right? And they operate and manage the transmission infrastructure also. They are the owners of the transmission infrastructure. Okay, now we are moving to distribution companies, right? So once the power is transmitted to the distribution network, and again, as I said, it has been stepped down to particular voltage, and it has been completely distributed throughout the city or the town, right? So in UK, what are all the distribution companies? So the major companies are SSE and Distribution, UK Power Networks, National Grid also is there in the distribution, right? Almost there are 10 companies which are distribution network operators, and other very small companies also there, which are IDNOs, the independent distribution network operators. So these are all private companies. On the other hand, India still do have the state-owned distribution companies. So, for example, APPDCL is there, Andhra Pradesh Power Distribution Company is there, Tangetco is there, Tamil Nadu Generation Distribution Company is there, Tata Power is there. So Tata Power is obviously the private company, and Reliance Infrastructure Limited is there. So they do distribution in Mumbai city. Uh, so yeah, so these are all the companies there in the distribution. So obviously they own the distribution infrastructure, and they do the operation and management of these infrastructure, right? And now we are moving to special part called energy suppliers. So I have not listed any energy suppliers in India, because there are no energy suppliers in India, because the distribution companies, whatever I told, the APBTCL, Tangetco, the Tata Power, they own the infrastructure also, and they are the one who are responsible to sell the power to the in customers, right? Either it can be a commercial customer or industrial customer or the domestic customer. But on the other hand, in UK, the distribution companies don't directly sell the power to the customers, even though their infrastructure, network infrastructure, is connected with the customers. They don't sell any power. So here comes the energy suppliers. So in UK, there are like, I guess, like maybe like 20-30 energy suppliers are there. I'm listed the major suppliers, which is British Gas, EDF Energy, Eon UK, Scottish Power, SSE, and OVO Energy, right? So they buy the power in the wholesale energy market, and then they sell the power to the end customers, right? So this kind of thing. So since the UK market is almost privatized and it is more mature, so there is opportunity for many companies to work on this market. On the other hand, India don't have this kind of companies. Obviously, in future maybe we can see that. Okay, so I have explained about what are all the companies involved in power generation, transmission, and distribution. So, in addition to that, we have various other companies involved in this supply chain also, right? So, so utility operators, right? So, somebody has to maintain the supply and demand, right? Otherwise the system will become unstable, right? So in addition to the companies whichever I explained earlier, there is a company called utility operator both in UK and India. So if you take UK, National Grid, ESO is there, and in India, POSOCO is there, which is right now Grid India Controller Limited. So they manage the complete supply and demand within the network, right? So POSOCO owns National Dispatch Center and Regional Dispatch Center in India, and they do manage the supply and demand. And similarly, National Grid ESO also having the control centers there in UK, and they manage the process also. And POSOCO was previously under Power Grid of India, and later in 2017 it has been registered as a separate entity, and right now it has been renamed as Grid India Controller Limited, right? And and we are having regulatory body also. So, for example, if you take UK, there is a regulatory body called Ofgem, and if you take India, there is a regulatory body called Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. So, what Ofgem do? So, both are predominantly different, but they are regulatory bodies. Because Ofgem, they protect the energy consumers, and they promotes the competition in the retail energy market, whereas the Central Electricity Regulatory Commission, they promotes competition in the bulk energy market. So that is the predominant difference between Ofgem and the CERC. And well, somebody has to facilitate the power trading between the power generation companies and the consumption companies, right? The energy suppliers and the distribution companies, right? So there are many companies operating in this space in the UK and India. So I'm just listing the major companies. So in UK, there is a company called Epoch Spot is there, Epoch Spot is there, and Nord Pool is there. And in India, there are companies like Indian Energy Exchange Limited is there, and Power Exchange India Limited is there. So both of these companies in India is introduced in 2008, I guess, and in UK these companies are working almost like for 3 decades. Okay, what these companies do? So if you take the Epoch Spot or Nord Pool, they facilitate the energy trading in of wholesale electricity markets, retail electricity markets, balancing mechanism market, and balancing services market. Whereas the Indian exchanges, what they do, they facilitate the trading of day ahead market, term ahead market, real time market, and renewable energy certificate market, right? Uh, so actually, they're not the they're not the equivalent markets. So they are obviously predominantly different, because like Indian energy market is still evolving. So since it is owned mostly by the government owned companies, the energy infrastructure, so the market is still evolving. But yeah, they do have these exchanges to do the trading, but yeah, they don't have the mechanism market or balancing services market. So obviously, like once the energy sector is completely privatized in India, if they do, maybe they will introduce these kind of markets. Right now, POSOCO is even taking care of this balancing mechanism or balancing services. But in UK, since the network is completely privatized, they do have these markets. They do have these companies to take care of these kind of services in UK. Well, I would like to mention about companies like aggregators. Uh, as I said, the Indian energy market is still evolving. Uh, there are these kind of companies, the aggregators, are not there in India, but they are there in UK. So, what aggregators really do? So, aggregators create a virtual power plants with solar and energy storage, and then they support demand side management, peak saving, frequency regulation, and grid stability. So these kind of companies are there in UK, and I would like to mention about companies like Flextricity and Autogrid. So these are aggregator companies here in UK, but these kind of companies are not there in India. Maybe they are still working there to find the market there in India. Well, as I said earlier, there are some companies which are directly supporting the electricity supply chain and some companies which are indirectly supporting the electricity supply chain. So, here is one of those companies which are EPC companies. So, what they actually do? So, if you take electrical infrastructure, it consists of various projects, right? You can't change the grid, you can't completely change the grid within a day or something, right? You have to build different substations, you have to build different HVDC project, you have to build different transmission lines, you have to build different power plants, either it can be conventional or renewable power plants, right? And right now the hot topic is energy storage, and people build the energy storage projects in and around the country, right? So to build all these projects, right, so there should be some company, right? So we can take UK and India, and we can see what are all the companies working in the space, right? So here I'd like to mention about three major companies in this sector. One is like Siemens Energy and GE Grid Solution and Hitachi Energy. Both of these companies working in both India and UK, right? So GE Grid Solution was previously with Alstom, and later GE purchased that, and Hitachi Energy was previously with ABB, and later Hitachi Energy purchased that, right? So what they do, as I said, they build these projects, right? So for example, if you take India, so let me complete the companies, right? In UK, there are some other companies also. Balfour BT PLC is also there. They are one of the biggest infrastructure building company. And in India, there is a company called Larsen and Toubro Limited. They are one of the biggest energy infrastructure building company also, right? So what they do? So, for example, in India, Power Grid invite bidders to build some substation projects, AC substation project, right? So, so these companies will bid for the project. Once they get the project, they completely manage the complete life cycle of the project. So, for example, from initial feed to the complete commissioning of the project. Well, right now we are moving into power equipment manufacturer. So obviously, I've explained about the various projects in the electrical infrastructure building. So if you take substation project, obviously there are many number of equipments in there in the substation, right? So it can be transformer, circuit breaker, switch gear, bus bar, protection relay, capacitor banks, control and monitoring, SCADA, which is substation automation systems, right? So as I said earlier, the three major companies, which is GE, Hitachi Energy, and Siemens Energy, they have the fair share of manufacturing also in both the countries. They do manufacture various electrical products. But in addition to that, there are some other companies also. Yeah, we will see what are the companies there. In UK, Lucy Electric UK is there. So they do manufacture switchgear and circuit breaker here in UK, and Wilson Power Solution is there. They do manufacture the transformers. And in India, the public sector companies there, BHEL, they do manufacture electric products, and Crompton Greaves Limited is there. Schneider Electric Limited is there. They do manufacture various transformers and switchgears there in India too. And Suslan Energy Limited is there. So they do manufacture the wind turbines in India, right? So these are all the obviously there are a lot of equipments in the substation, and if you take each and every different project, if you take the HVDC, there are different kind of converters is required, and the HVDC transmission line is required. So obviously I'm not going to explain all the projects and all the products in those projects and who are all manufactured, but I would like to give some idea about that in this video, right? Well, guys, we have reached the final company of this electricity supply chain, which is consulting and engineering firms. Before that, if you like the content, please do subscribe to this channel. That would be helpful for me to create more such contents like this. Okay, now let's see what consulting and engineering firms do and what are all the companies there in UK and India, right? So generally, the consulting and engineering firms, they support the feasibility. So they work on particular project. For example, if you have a substation project, and like for example, if you have a solar power plant and you have to build a substation for solar power plant, and you have to build the solar power plant. So the renewable energy developers will be there and they can invest the money, but they don't have the competency, right? So they hire the consultants to do those work. So what all the works they can extend their support to? They can do the feasibility study, site selection and assessment, design and engineering, procurement support, project management. Even they do environmental and permitting surveys and construction supervision. So this kind of supports they can provide. Obviously, like it has to be between the renewable energy developer and the consultants. Whatever support they need, they can hire the support, they can get the support from the consultants, right? So let's see what are all the companies operating in this space in both in UK and India, right? So in UK, there is a company called Mott McDonald is there, Arup is there, Jacobs Engineering Group is there, WSP UK is there, and AECOM UK is there. So obviously, these companies are initially started as a civil engineering consulting companies. Later, they are providing consulting for all kind of infrastructure projects. And India, on the other hand, we have companies like Engineers India Limited is there, TCE is there, Tata Consulting Engineers is there. They do also work for like maybe like 100 years or 80 years, I guess. And even these kind of private companies like Mott McDonald also there in India. uh, the foreign companies, multinational companies also there in India, they do operate in India also, right? So these companies will extend the support to the projects. So okay guys, if you enjoy this video, please do support, right? Thanks.